Question now rises upon third reading and final passage of Senate Bill 989. Representative Dembrow.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And colleagues, this is my last bill for the day. Senate Bill 989 is a technical fix to the way that representation elections for collective bargaining occur for OUS faculty. Their current system is an anomaly within the world of collective bargaining, a relic of an earlier time, and it serves no good purpose. This issue was part of last session's omnibus bill to reform Oregon's Public Employee Collective Bargaining Act. There was no testimony expressing either opposition or concern. Nevertheless, it died when the bill died on the Senate side, as so many good bills did. Please ignore that. So this time it was put forth as a standalone bill and passed out of the Senate. Typically, just to explain the bill, typically within the world of collective bargaining, in the private sector as well as the public sector, you have a ballot that allows the voter to choose among two or more options. No representation is always an option required by law. And then if there's one union that is vying for representation, they'll have that one union. If there's more than one, you'll have the others that have produced adequate showing of interest cards. The voter checks the box of his or her choice. Winning requires a majority of the votes cast. Normally, these days, there's only one union on the ballot, so the matter is settled in a single round. If there is more than one union on the ballot, along with no rep, and none of the options gets a majority, then it may go to a second round. The system for OUS faculty is different. It's the legacy of an experiment in instant runoff balloting that was presumably intended to be a model for everyone else, but it has never caught on. They have a two-part ballot. In the first part of the ballot, the voter chooses between representation and no representation. In the second part of the ballot, the question is asked, regardless of how you voted in Part 1, mark an X in the square of your choice below. And then there's a list of the unions. The voters, even if their first choice was no rep, choose one of the unions. If no rep prevails in Part 1, then the votes in Part 2 are ignored. If representation prevails in Part 1, then the votes in Part 2 are counted and the winner is declared. This system can be quicker if there's more than one union vying for the vote, but this is increasingly rare. And as a result, most representation elections are over with the first round. And I don't believe that in this case, quicker is better. In my experience, it's better to go to a second round, have a focused debate on the two remaining options, and give the voters a clear choice. Having a second round does not have a significant cost to the parties in these kinds of elections. They are not very expensive to run. The other problem with the two-part ballot is that it violates the rule of keep it simple that should prevail in election ballots. As you all know, the more complicated the ballot, the more likely you'll have error. Yes, one might think that this should not apply to highly educated university faculty, but I'm afraid that it does. There have been a number of instances of voter confusion and unintentional errors that have surfaced after the fact in past OUS elections. In my own experience, election errors happen irrespective of education level. I hope you'll appreciate that that's a nice way of putting it. So Senate Bill 989 simply deletes the language in the Public Employee Collective Bargaining Statute that creates this special procedure for OUS faculty. Their process will now be the same as it is for all other OUS employees, for all other public employees, and for all other private employees. This bill has no organizational opposition. OUS and the OUS Faculty Senate are neutral on it. It's supported by AAUP, the PSU Faculty Association, and on and on. You have a floor letter that lists all of those. Colleagues, it's time to change this, and I urge an aye vote.
Further discussion, Representative Greenlick.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the bill?
To the bill.
I'm really happy to stand up and support this bill. I had the unique experience of serving on the organizing committee for the AFT part-time faculty union at Portland State, and the takeaway message I had from that is that faculty people are pretty naive in this process. And it was, faculty people like to always make things exquisite and unusual, but the fact is that this really does not serve the interests of anybody in this sort of complicated balloting measure. It is very much more appropriate to the rights of the workers and to the rights of the organization to have a more straightforward system, and this bill simply provides some simplicity in what should be a relatively simple process. I urge you to join me with a yes vote on this bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Seeing no further discussion, Representative Dembrowcar, do you wish to close? He does not. Those who are of the opinion that the bill should pass will vote aye. Those opposed, no. The clerk will open the voting system. Representative Widener, how do you vote? Widener votes no. Representative Beyer, how do you vote? Beyer votes aye. Representative Hoyle, how do you vote? Representative Hoyle votes aye. Representative Berger votes aye. Senate Bill 989, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed.